We'll call the meeting of the Isabella County Board of Commissioners, the work session to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, a roll call, please.
Commissioner Hutchinson,
Here.
Embry,
Here.
Gelzinski,
Here.
Commissioner
Here.
Commissioner Marino,
Here.
Commissioner Swaney,
Here.
Commissioner Hope. All present, Mr. Vice Chair, except for Chairman Hope.
Thank you. Chairman Hope is excused for the meeting. We will look at the agenda. We have general public comments. Under presentations and special reports, we have 5 items, including 3 millage request considerations. And then we'll have take a look at the Administrator Controller's recommended budget. And we'll have a report from Administrator Controller Frost. Appointments to boards and commissions, none. Under committee reports, Finance and Administration Committee.
Mr. Vice Chairman, Finance and Administration is prepared.
Thank you. We have then the Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
The Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee is all set, Mr. Vice Chair.
Human Resources and Public Works Committee.
Human Resources and Public Works Committee is all set, Mr. Vice Chair.
Intergovernmental Affairs to report on Commissioner Moreno.
No.
None. Administrator Controller, we have no business shown. We have no unfinished business. Under new business, we have 2 items. One dealing with setting up a public hearing for the proposed budget, and another one to set up a special meeting to review Johnson Controls financial proposal for the performance projects that we're looking at. Then we'll have another opportunity for general public comments. And then we'll have announcements before adjournment. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Don't move, Marino.
Been moved and supported to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We have an agenda. We'll move on to general public comments. We have quite a few people in the audience. Anybody want to weigh in on something before we get into the business of the meeting? Anybody online? Okay, with that, we'll close the general public comments. There'll be a second opportunity just before we close the meeting. We'll now go into presentations and special reports. The first item we have is consider approving the fiscal year 2024 budget millage for the Isabella County Commission on Aging at 1 mil. And we have Jen Crawford, Director, to present the proposal.
Hello there.
Jen?
So prior to this year, we have always taken the 0.88 of up to 1 mil that we have available to us. And we have been in a deficit budget for the last few years. And really it's been since the indirect costs took effect with the coming out of our fund. And I just felt like this year, I feel like it is time. Like prior to this, I felt like we were okay. Our fund balance is sitting right around 2.5 million, but we're going to be taking a little over 500,000 for the pavilion project. And if we continue to dip in at like over $300,000 each year, it's not going to take long for us to whittle that away. And with us, you know, our main funding source is the millage. And so we do want to have enough in reserve each year to cover us for about the first 6 months in our budget. And by doing that, I really feel like it would be smart for us to go up to the 1 mil and take that for this year and see how we do. Right now with that would give us actually over $6,000 in a surplus potentially. But what we've run into this last year, even with our building, with different building projects we've had to go, I had to just come to you at the last meeting. requesting to move money from our fund into our budget just to cover issues with the building. And so I just feel like, in my opinion, this would be the smart decision.
Are there questions of Jen on the proposal to increase the millage to 1 mil? Or comments? Thank you, Jen.
Director Crawford.
The next item is consider approving the fiscal year 2024 budget millage for the Isabella County Medical Care Facility at 1 mil. And we have Alyssa Haynek, Administrator, here to present the proposal.
Hi, I also have with me Phil Alt. He's our contract CPA.
What was the name again?
Alt,
Okay, thank you.
I am here to request our full mill. We have requested the full millage for a couple of years now. The facility is still recovering our census from COVID, and we do need that full millage to, sustain our budget again this year.
I know last year you had commented you had rooms available, but didn't have staff to,
We do have the staffing corrected now so that we can take residents. We've seen about a 4% increase in our census, but building a census, does take a little bit of time because our building serves the community with a lot of people that just need a short-term rehab as well through with the hospital and everything. So, we kind of have to balance having long-term residents and the need of the community to have people, coming and going for shorter stays, maybe 2 weeks or, a month, that kind of thing. So we do a combination of both.
okay. Are there questions or comments on the proposal?
Just glad to hear that staffing is back up. I know we're all struggling to maintain that.
That's a knock on wood.
Yes, sure.
For the month.
Yes.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions or comments, thank you. And we'll consider that finally at the meeting tonight. Our third item of business under presentation special reports is consider approving the fiscal year 2024 budget millage for Isabella County Parks and Recreation at 0.35 of 1 mil. And we have the new director, Alexis Hansen, here to make the proposal to us.
Hello.
Good afternoon,
Hi.
Director Haynes.
We are requesting the millage at 0.35 mils. This is the final year for that 6-year millage, and it does allow us to continue to make capital improvements. We have for next year planned a large improvement project at the recreation area. Over the last few years, we've been able to accomplish some pretty large improvement projects, including the river erosion project that affected Majeski Landing and Deerfield Park,
That's good.
as well as some pretty drastic updates at Coldwater Lake Family Park, which were much needed. And so by continuing to use these millage funds, it allows us to offer quality facilities to the public while maintaining a balanced budget. The other thing I want to note is that with these funds, it allows us the liquidity to take advantage of sales and matching grant dollars when those become available. We can move at a different pace on projects. And so even currently, we're in the midst of a project where having funding available is allowing us to take advantage of some matching grant dollars and some funding. So as you all know, some of you even are probably more familiar with some of these projects than I am. These millage dollars are very important to our department, and we're just requesting that we are able to use that 0.35 for next year.
Questions, comments for Alexis?
Just say one thing, I mean, we've got some amazing parks in our
Mhm.
county. And with Frank sitting on that board, it's just amazing, some of the things that we do, we keep up to date. And it's so important that we keep these moving parts.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I do want to welcome you to the Isabella County family. I know you have a background with the Chippewa Watershed Conservancy.
Yes.
And so I think that's important, especially in one thing that I find very important to me, and that is the Fisher Annex property. I know we had a state grant quite a few years ago, probably 20 years ago, and we couldn't come to a final price on it, but we need to keep the conversation going with the Fisher family and try to bring that into a permanent part of Deerfield Nature Park.
Yes, I know that
Sometime I'll knock on your door and talk to you about it.
definitely open door. So any project ideas, feel free to come see me.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Well, now we're here for the big report from the Administrator Controller Frost on the 2024 budget proposal, the recommended budget.
Recommended budget. Very good, sir. I think what I'm gonna try to do, I know we brought several copies, but I don't know that there's enough for everyone, so I'm gonna share the budget screen so that everyone in attendance can hopefully see. Very good. So here we have the fiscal year 2024 recommended budget. Again, hard copies in front of you if you would like. Certainly, I know the agenda now has this hyperlinked, so you can get to it on the website as well. Let's talk about the elected officials in the county. We haven't had any changes in those this year. So the only thing that's changed there is the chairmanship and vice chairmanship. So we have, starting on page 3, this is the budget transmittal letter that I submit with the budget each year. Talks about the good spirits that we've all had building the budget from department heads and electeds and all county staff. I do appreciate the 4 drafts that the finance committee reviewed and considered and talked through the culture of what we want to build in this 24 budget. The expenditures for fiscal 24 in the general fund total $28,882,154. And if that seems elevated to you, it is. Remember, in fiscal 24, we've got just over $3 million built into the sheriff's office for that $4.8 million communications tower project that he has going with the Michigan Public Safety Communications System. So really, both revenues and expenditures in fiscal 24 are elevated by about $3 million. We don't generally have a $28 million budget. That's my point. Significant challenges in the 24 budget. Certainly, healthcare premiums are a large part of our budget in fiscal 24. The collective spend on healthcare between the county and the employees will be just over $4.5 million. We saw a 9% increase in those premiums for 2024 with our recent renewal. And I think it's important to note that that increase is being borne by the county. We are not passing that increase on to employees. So you'll see your cost share premiums stay the same from what they are in the current 2023. The graph there that you can see clearly shows the blue is the county portion, the gray is the employee portion. Certainly trending up. I do want to talk about PA 152. Now we do have a resolution for PA 152 as part of our budget document, not ever to be missed. And as tradition goes, we do have that set up for the board to opt out Remember, you can choose to pay 80% of healthcare costs and employees would have to pay 20. Or you could choose the hard cap amounts that the state puts out every year for single, 2-person and family coverage, or you can opt out. Traditionally, this board has always opted out and set those cost share rates at something other than the 20% of the hard caps. Right now, plans A, B, and C are at 9% cost share, 5% cost share, and 0% cost share. I will say the county insurance committee that was formed last year continues to be very diligent in their work. And they really are analyzing, looking at all the options out there, not quite ready to make a recommendation to bring forward for any changes. But I can, as I wrote here, I do have every faith that any action they recommend will come from thoughtful consideration and careful comparison, that those folks really are doing a heavy lift. Another big expense in general funds, certainly, and across other funds, are our retirement expenses. As we know, we have 2 retirement systems, the old traditional defined benefit pension, the new defined contribution for new hires. In fiscal 24, for the defined benefit pension liability, we will be sending to MERS a monthly payment of just over $200,000. We have an unfunded accrued liability of just over 19 million with MERS. This graph shows the contributions in red by the county and contributions by employees, and contributions in red by the county for defined benefit, contributions in gray for defined contribution. So this is a county cost, defined benefit pension in red. You remember, you'll see that big drop in 2019 when MERS came and proposed a different scenario to us where we could lower our payments and kind of extend our obligation, and we did. But as you can see, those costs are climbing again. Yes, sir.
And excuse me, on the 23-24 MERS contribution, there was the MERS had a big, their investments were poor. Is that figured in on the 23 and the 24, or is that not materialized yet?
So the 24 payments are based on the December 21st, 2022 actuary that we get from MERS. That does take into account the negative 10% year return on investment year that they had last year. However, what MERS does is smooths that over, I think, over 10 years. So yes, it's baked in there, but next year we will only see 1/10 of that impact, because they do, and we want them to. When we have a bad year, we wouldn't be able to afford the payments otherwise. We want them to smooth that over time, and they do. So it is in the numbers, but it's only 1/10 of the impact.
Okay. So the 23 would have been impacted. I'm just surprised that wasn't bumped up a little bit more. So
were we,
Okay.
to be honest, so were we. I will say though, and maybe this will help, and please feel free to jump in, Melissa, that we get the 24 numbers that we'll use in the fiscal 24 budget are actually given to us in the 21 actuarial. They go forward 2 years when they give it to us. So the actuary that we got in June from 22 does have the negative 10% return on investment incorporated, but they had already given us those 24 numbers in the 21 valuation. So I think I'm gonna backtrack on the answer that it's in there, but I don't think we've seen the full the effect of that
Full
10% year then. We couldn't have, because they're always 2 years ahead with those numbers. Any other questions about MERS retirement? I do want to point out the top of this page are defined benefit members who are who have the pension plan currently. Their contributions range from 0. We do have some groups that pay nothing to 3.95% match. Remember, the defined contribution, county gives 7%, the employee pays 2%. Corrections and police clerks pay 3% based on their bargaining agreement. So we're going to turn to general fund revenues. Property tax is certainly a big story. The bulk of our revenues, over 50%, and with state shared revenue together, those two total 64% of our general fund revenues. So these are extremely important. Property tax revenues are increasing, although, of course, as we know, the turbines continue to decrease because they are personal property. And I will say that we are in year 3 of operation, full operation of those wind farms, or full depreciation when our tax levy hits in July of next year for the 24 budget. And if DTE had not agreed to using those new settlement multipliers for depreciation, we would be at 0.75% depreciated next year instead of 0.803. So we do, we have a little bit more revenues because of that settlement. We know from equalization from 22 to 23, we saw an increase of 3.29% in our taxable value, and that was with the depreciation of the turbines. So even though that those turbines are depreciating and bringing down, new construction is still going strong and building us back up. Future potentials certainly can be found in utility scale solar projects, and continuing that new construction and looking at if there's any construction that maybe is not on the books, right? State shared revenue, since 2011, we have been, we've seen a decline in 2011 for state shared revenue. That is a result of back when the state moved the county levy from winter to summer, created a fund that counties could draw on instead of getting their state shared revenue from the state. Big budget savings for the state back in, I believe, 2004. This graph is always in our budget document to show those lost revenues from the state, right? That yellow area, we've lost that money, never to get it back. But I do like the story that this graph tells, because it does show a commitment by the state to start funding state sharing revenues where it was, I think, originally intended to be, after several years of kind of ignoring us. We see a 6% increase in state shared revenue in fiscal 24, and it's just about $1.5 million that we receive now from state sales tax.
Isn't it a possibility that there will be a revenue sharing fund that we're working on getting to implemented, which will help even more, right?
I think it will help even more. Yes, that's Michigan Association of Counties. It's one of their priority items, I think, for this year is to see the establishment of that revenue sharing trust fund. Indirect costs is another major revenue that we receive in general fund. In 2024, we'll transfer in just over 844,000 of indirect costs. And you heard Jen Crawford from Commission on Aging talk about indirect costs. Probably Director Borton and Director Nieport as well talk about the indirect costs that general fund receives from inspections fund, from the MRF fund, from 911. And those are for the cost of, essentially covers the cost of doing business, covers admin, treasurer's department, it covers information system and facilities, those departments that touch every department. We have to figure out what the piece of the pie is that the front of the court has, and that's a state requirement from DHHS every year. And because we have to figure out that pie, we know all the other pieces, and so we use that document to recoup some of those costs of general fund. There are a couple of funds that traditionally transfer into general fund, not indirect costs, but that they perform so well, they're able to cover some of the general fund expenses. One of those traditionally is the commissary fund. It performs very well. In 2024, commissary fund will be transferring in just over $156,000. That will cover the cost of the 2 vehicles that sheriff is requesting, as well as this year is going to cover $35,000 in a vehicle repair and maintenance line in the sheriff's office. Also, we do receive in fiscal 24 transfer in from CPL fund, concealed pistol licenses, just over 27,000, and that goes to pay part of a position in the clerk's office. Handles CPLs. General fund expenditures, the two big ones are certainly salaries and fringe benefits. Salaries make up about 34% of the general fund expenditures. And it was interesting to me that this changed. Last year it was 42%. I thought, well, how did that go down? Again, it's because of the tower project, right? It's in there, and it's inflating our numbers. So I just want you to think of that. But if this was interesting to me, you'd think the same would happen to fringe benefits. Last year, fringe benefits were 24%. Now this year it's 23%, even though things are elevated. So that tells me fringe benefits really are rising higher than anything else. Remember the days when fringe benefits used to be about 50% of wage? These are,
Yeah.
those days are long gone, I think. Oh, I should mention, this is pretty important. There is a 3% cost of living allowance built into the fiscal 24 recommended budget. And it shows in here that the estimated cost of granting that 3% to the general fund was just over $328,000. I do want to point out that this came about after the last finance meeting, receiving direction and clarity from the finance committee. The fiscal year 2024 recommended budget incorporates the MIDC, Michigan Indigent Defense Commission Standard 8 in the public defender's office, like was mandated to do, but it also incorporates parity as we believe across public defender's office, prosecuting attorney's office, and the attorney positions in the trial court. That is to say, an assistant attorney in the public defender's office was likened to assistant in the PA, was likened to, I think, law clerk in the trial court, senior likened to senior, and so on. It doesn't include any salary adjustments beyond standard 8 that had been requested. We don't doubt that there are differences among those offices, but we are waiting for the professional classification and compensation study to be able to structure those as they should be. Capital projects, general fund capital in 2024 totals just over 323,000. You can see all of the good stuff we're getting done there. Transfer in from commissary, again, covering cost of vehicle replacements. And we were able to carve out about 2.6 million in requested capital for the Johnson Controls performance contracting project if we move forward with that. Obviously, that's a lot of projects coming off our capital list, which is fantastic if we can get that done. Still have a little bit more work to do. General fund debt service, there's $1.1 million built into the fiscal year 24 budget for our one and only debt obligation, which is the USDA loan on the sheriff's office and correctional facility. This 1.1 is not what the annual cost of that payment will be going forward, but because we haven't drawn on the full 41.5 million yet, our loan payment won't be the full payment. Appropriations are the next expenditure we talk about, just over $2 million to fund some of those programs that you see listed there. Outstanding issues in general fund budget. These are just some things that we continue to do to try to balance the budget. I think we started with $5.5 million deficit in the requested budget. We continued to fund one of the senior assistant prosecuting attorney positions with ARPA dollars to save general fund dollars. We continue to use some of our defined contribution forfeiture funds to offset the payment to MERS for defined contribution folks. So those forfeitures are when a new hire leaves us before they're vested. Our portion, they always have their portion, they always get their portion, but our 7% sits in there and at a point is turned over into forfeiture, and we use that to offset our payment, and we budget to do so. As we talked about in finance committee, we traditionally haven't budgeted for the local community stabilization authority funds that we get. This is personal property tax reimbursement dollars that we didn't think we were owed, but the state keeps sending it to us, so we'll start budgeting for it. We did with the recent lighting retrofit, excuse me, projects in this building, in the trial court, and in the county building. We did reduce general fund amounts for a little bit for utilities for both consumers and DTE. And as we talked about in finance, I did ask Director Borton to sharpen his pencil and reduce the appropriation requested from general fund from $415,000 to $315,000 for the MRF, which he has done. Thank you, Jake. Culturally, one of the things that's been exciting, I think, in the last couple of years, as far as the budget, we've talked about building more in for capital improvement for those surprise expenses. And we had hoped to build in $250,000 each year. We did end up removing $100,000 from that, but we still are budgeting an additional $150,000 in facilities for these kind of unforeseen capital improvements. I think that's really evolving and culturally with the budget. I'm thrilled to see that. The next bullet point is a little tougher. It's the fact that we are using just over $1.5 million of general fund unassigned fund balance to balance revenues with expenditures in 2024. Our financial forecast tool has shown that, you know, there's certainly a cliff coming. This point is just that we need to continue to build on that forecast. We are testing the integrity, the accountants that we have contracted with us. Currently, we've been, anybody that's working with us, we've been giving them that forecast to please poke holes in it, please test it, please kick the tires. We'll continue to update that and test its integrity. Lots going on. My apologies. Get back here at the materials recovery facility. Again, thank you, Director Borton, for lowering your request. We know that the current appropriation from general fund is sizable, but we also know that this community demands that we have the recycling service. So the fact that we keep appropriating that much, I think shows that the support of this board for the MRF and what the community desires. If you have been living under a rock, you probably don't know that we're doing some great things out at the MRF and moving forward after the feasibility study with hopefully a major rehab out there, retooling and some automating of the equipment out there. Part of what is motivating this change is that the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, EGLE, is requiring counties to develop a materials management plan. And so this is looking to divert materials from landfills, get more recyclables back into the manufacturing stream for reuse. And as we have a MRF already, and we sit very uniquely located in central Michigan, the state is actually supporting our move to become a regional hub. So very exciting things happening at the MRF. Of course, again, if you're living under that rock, you might not know that we're also building a new sheriff's office and correctional facility out on East Remus Road. We have multiple walls up. It's very exciting to see. And certainly the costs of that project still remain uncertain. And we do continue to have a lot of change orders coming forward. But we do still have a lot of fund balance committed to that project too. Juvenile care facility, the story there, I think everybody knows the tribe has graciously helped us fund a feasibility study. So the RFP for that study will be going out soon, and the study is expected to be completed in fiscal 24, looking at secure, non-secure, looking at the existing correctional facility location, but also looking at more, not just limiting to that. Getting close to the end of the letter here, personnel reclassification requests, as we talked about at finance, the recommended budget does not include any funding for those requests. We will be undergoing a wage and classification study, and that RFP will be released, as I see here, before adoption of fiscal year 2024 budget. Intention is to have it released by the end of August. One thing we did do in fiscal 24 is move the annual cost of living allowance pay increases, and actually the PTO payout to October instead of January. So the PTO payout was done in the PTO in the non-rep personnel manual language last year. There was no cost to moving that payout, so we went ahead with it. There was a cost to giving the cost of living increase in October versus January, and so we waited until that could be built into the budget. But it is built into the recommended budget, and so we are anticipating the cost of living increases October 1. Millage effort. This is in here because of, it's hard to bring a budget to you that is, as we're recommending $1.5 million used of fund balance. Every bone in my body tells me we won't end the year using that, because that traditionally we haven't. But to me, even though it's, I say quote unquote balanced, it uses a lot of fund balance. And I feel like that forecast tool that we've been using shows that we're going to either need a large influx of revenues or a large cut of expenditures to make this work going forward. And I know that millage effort is one of the only identified sources to bring in the kind of revenue that we're going to need. So I just think obviously that is paramount in 2024. Well, the last thing I say in my letter, of course, is appreciating everyone in this room and working with us to bring this budget to fruition. I can't say that more than the person sitting to the left of me. Melissa Franquist says just truly undying devotion to this county. If you don't know and understand that, she just does it all. You do it very well, and I appreciate it very much. Hey, into the budget document we go. This is the budget resolution. On the front page, we talk about the mills, our 6.61 mills, the 1 mill that Commission on Aging has requested, the 1 mill is in here that medical care is requesting, the 0.35 for parks, and 8620 that we heard from ICTC last meeting. This sets commissioner salaries, there's no increase, and it sets elected official salaries. These have the 3% increase built in. The budget resolution, nothing changed as far as the language in here. This gives a lot of authority to me. It spells out authorities that I have. It spells out when we have to go to the board for budget amendments, that type of thing. It talks about positions that are grant funded. If the funding goes away, the position shall also go away. Basically, this is the budget resolution you'll adopt September 19th to adopt the budget for the general fund, special revenue funds, all of that. The next resolution in here, again, you'll adopt this on the night of your second September meeting. This is the PA 152 resolution opting out. General fund budget, this is the revenue and expenditure estimate, very, very high level. From, you can see taxes, you can see wind turbines broken out. Really, everything's holding the line. Federal and state revenues are way down from current year. You'll see this almost 13.5 million in current year. That's because of the over $8 million of ARPA revenue that we recently recognized for lost revenue. In this year, really, it should be back down to that 3 or 4 million, but because again of that $3 million tower project, I should say it's a $4.8 million project, 3 million of it is in 2024, and that's what's elevating those federal and state revenues. Other than that, really everything's holding the line. The great news really is an interest in rents. Our rents haven't changed, believe me, but interest is once again a revenue in the budget. That is very nice. Expenditures, again, really holding the line. I think the anomaly there again is in public safety, and that's that tower project, elevating that number. Other financing uses are down because in the current year, we had more going out to the jail project than we have budgeted. In 2024, we have budgeted the payment for the USDA loan, but as we spoke about in finance, we'll amend the budget in 24 as we need to make expenses on, we need to pay expenses on that project. The money is assigned in your fund balance or committed in your fund balance to pay it, but it's not in the budget. So when we build it into the budget through budget amendments in 24, it'll be a net zero. We'll come to the board because it'll be increasing the budget. We'll have to come to the board, but it'll be a net zero because we're bringing in fund balance to offset the expense. Well, I guess I should say the fund balance, even after using the $1.5 million in fiscal 24 is projected to end at 16 million. That's adding just over 5 million in the current year, but that's if revenues and expenditures pan out to what we have them budgeted for. If we have some lapsed wages or unspent expenditures, that'll help to build more into the budget. We usually do have those. This is just a breaking out the revenue summary a little different. So you can see visually, as I said before, taxes are more than half of the revenue in general fund. Same for expenditures, just a visual breakout of where those cost centers are. Again, public safety expenses are elevated because of that tower project. This really, I don't know how much you want me to go into the detail that leads up to the revenues and expenditures in the budget, or if there's any specific questions about what those are. This is the FTE sheet. The only full-time equivalents that are changing in information systems. We did incorporate a temporary position to transfer the duties of the IT director to someone new. That's really bringing up the FTEs in that department. And we know once it's only budgeted for, I think, 7 months of the year, but we know the intent going forward is to have 3 full-time equivalents. Once that transitionary duties is done, or that person perhaps becomes the director, they're gonna then need help. We've recognized that. I think the only other FT that's changed is in emergency management department. The story isn't changing from last year. I think that last year we just didn't have, maybe we didn't have everything built in, but this is, remember Helen Lee as a full-time emergency management coordinator. And then we've got that part-time planner in there too. And some of Director Griffith's hours go to that as well. Other than that, no other changes to FTEs. I think Commission on Aging and Parks and Rec budgeted a little bit more for part-time. And so you saw their FTEs going up a little bit, but that's not adding a new position. Something new we're doing this year, and I hope it gives some comfort to employees. I told you that cost share for health care is not changing for employees. So we thought, since we know what those are, we might as well put the document in here. So you can see employee cost shares aren't changing here. What is changing are the county monthly premiums, but again, we're not passing that on. This shows the personnel requests. Anything highlighted in yellow was approved. As I just talked through, the only positions that were approved were standard 8 related positions, attorney positions, and the temporary position in IT department. Capital improvements, everything in bright yellow is what is getting approved and done in fiscal 24. Hopefully the projects in white were deferred, and the projects in like a peachy color are what we're considering to build into the Johnson Controls performance contracting project. That's for general fund. This is for other funds. Commission on Aging is getting a new ice and water dispenser and large food mixer. Day treatment's getting a new parking lot, and Parks is, as they traditionally do, has a lot of projects they're working on, most notably Coldwater Lake Family Park Sewer Project in a very large new playground structure at Herrick Recreational Area. One thing that Facilities Director Steve Shoemaker has put together for us since he's been here, thank you very much, Steve, is a 5-year capital improvement plan, just kind of so we know what's coming, right? Not just what's in front of us, but what's coming down the road. He's done that not just for general fund that we see here, but also for other funds. Super helpful to plan like that.
Very nice.
American Rescue dollars, as we talked about, some were built in for senior assistant prosecuting attorney position. Just continuing these ARPA projects that have been vetted through committee and already conceptually at least approved through the board. Parks is at 250,000 for the Coldwater Lake Family Park Sewer Project, and they have been to the ARPA committee to request another 100,000. So I will be bringing that forward to the board at some point. And then the treasurer in his foreclosure prevention project that he had requested $200,000 of ARPA monies, believes that can cover more than just the 1 year of that foreclosure prevention. So that is good news. It's very good news. So those are the only ARPA dollars that are built into any of the 24 budgets. The next several pages, I'm not going to go through them. I'm going to skip through them, but I want all the department heads and electeds, please, to look at those. Those are fee schedules. We don't know your fees. You know your fees the best. So please take a look at your respective fees and let us know if we've got anything to change there. This part of the budget document goes into what's called our special revenue funds, our 200 level funds. Most of these funds, as you look through here, have a use of fund balance. You'll notice in the column over to the right, and change or use of fund balance. Use of fund balance will be in parentheses to be a negative. most of these do use up their fund balance rather than getting an appropriation from general fund, right? We want them to use up their money first. I will say registered deeds, automation fund is one that normally transfers to general fund, but we know that registered deeds has some big expenses coming up in that fund and we need to build that up, kind of like we're doing with delinquent tax and PA 123 fund in case those funds need monies. We're not taking monies from those funds to build into general fund, leaving them there to build up. The proprietary funds, enterprise funds, if you will. Like our delinquent tax, building inspection, like Isabella, and again, so you'll see those funds using fund balance. One thing that does have me concerned is, the building inspection fund it had such a nice balance in there after the wind turbine project, and I just see that slowly ticking down, so I do think that's one to watch. And I know that the use of fund balance is likened to the amount of indirect costs that they pay. So that you have to understand that symbiosis. The commissary fund, I did want to point out, I know there was some of you that asked about, can they sustain the dollars being taken for the vehicles, and we do certainly analyze that, and they can. Now, these pages, the rest of it, I know you're not gonna want me to walk through. These are every little line item that makes up your revenues and your expenditures. Happy to walk through any of it. I'm happy to answer questions or ask Melissa any of the questions, but I doubt that any of you are sitting there wanting me to walk through those. At the very back of the budget document, there are details on a few of our funds, such as Parks and Rec. You can see that they are very much holding the line with revenues. Their expenditures, I'll go to the bottom page, are up a little bit, but that's because of all those capital projects that we showed. Commission on Aging. I'm guessing that this does not include a 1 mil tax increase, but keeping it at the 0.88. But I know you heard from Jen Crawford on the extra that would bring in, and you can definitely see in their expenditure side, not too far, that they're holding the line, but expenses are up there, and whoa, he's right, Jen's right. They need more revenue to cover. Central Dispatch 911, remember they get their revenues from surcharges, very much holding the line, a little bit of increase projected, and expenditures really holding the line too, down a little bit from some of the major expenses they had this year, from some of the bigger projects. The last one in here is our MRF, our recycling fund. You can see revenues are down a little bit, and I think that probably has to do somewhat with the appropriation coming down from general fund, and expenses are down from current amended budget. So thank you, Jake, for holding the line there. That is the last page of that document. Feel like there was a lot maybe that I skipped over or didn't say, but I will stop sharing my screen now. I can bring it back up if we want to look at anything specific. Are there any questions about what's built into the budget? Remember, process wise, this is the full board is seeing it. This is, I think, the 5th draft that the finance committee is seeing. On September 5th, you'll have your public hearing, so long as you schedule that tonight. This document will be on file at the admin office for review. Is prior to that public hearing, so It'll be there for inspection. We'll have it on our website. Public hearing will be on the 5th and anybody can talk about the budget. Anybody can come and speak about what's in there, what they want to see in there, what they don't want to see in there, including the board. Hopefully we'll hear from a lot of people. Traditionally, we don't. And then 2 weeks later, September 19th is when you'll be charged with adopting a budget. We'll need to adopt a budget by law. You have to do that by September 30th.
I just have a question. How about the revenue from cannabis? I've been reading in the paper that it's really increasing statewide up to like $2 billion or something. How does that? Or where do we, what is that?
Sure. So it's general fund revenue. And well, there's two streams. One is for recreational marijuana, one is for the medical marijuana. The recreational marijuana is by far a much larger revenue, 259,000 in 2024 that were expected for the county share of those recreational marijuana shared revenues with the state. And that I think is so much per
Okay,
facility.
each place.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. And then the medical piece, medical marijuana, I think is a lot smaller.
Because there's recreational ones and the people that went to the medical ones don't even have to go through all the rigmarole now. You know,
You're right, it used to be that well, medical was the first dollars that we got, and it was, we would do the medical marijuana grant, and I haven't seen that come through in recent years either. Now that I think about it, you're right. I think that's dwindling.
Other questions, comments on the proposed budget? Commissioner Sweeney?
Yeah, so the RFP you're suggesting for the wage classification, you're planning on submitting that when this year?
I hope to release it by the end of this month. So what that will be is, a request for proposals from companies. What would be your cost and what would be your, what would be your process to come here and do a wage and classification study?
And so when would you predict the time that or date that we would actually have a contract with the company for an RFP study and then actually have numbers back from them?
Fair enough. Our RFP process, we usually release it and have it out there a couple of weeks. Then we have a mandatory meeting for all of the potential vendors. And then we usually give them a month after that to prepare. So to prepare a response. So we would probably have, I would think, responses due mid-October in that scenario. Mid to late October, we'll go through, might take a couple of weeks. We would bring a contract to the board for consideration of, who we recommend for a vendor, probably in November. Have a contract signed. If they get underway, I would think by late spring, early summer, they would be done and we would have a presentation to the board, would be my expectation.
So it'll be a quick turnaround to bake those into even fiscal year 2025 budget.
Late spring, early summer would be go time for budget. For sure.
Right. And so we're looking at, I guess predicting those or baking those in very fast before we have to have, the same process done for a budget for those RFPs. And what, can you remind me what the cost of our last wage classification study was? Was that
It's like 80, 90,000.
80, 90,000, right?
Of time, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so looking at, let's see, incremental costs of looks like 270,000 if all proposed changes were done on page 27. You've got
For all the personnel requests?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm just eyeballing it here. So there's probably about 110,000 that is denied and looking to be delayed until the reclassification studies are done.
I know in general fund, I think it was 80,000. I feel like that's what we used in the amount in finance when we said these are, because it's all built into the requested budget. And so in our reconciliation with finance, I believe 80,000 was the number we used to say these positions aren't, these reclassifications aren't getting recommended. So it actually was a savings in general fund. So I think 80,000 was the number we used.
Okay, I was just looking really quick at the denials here. I'm doing a quick add. I guess, looking at, some of these to be delayed, for it, I would say is relatively risky to delay, reclassification of drivers, knowing how hard it is to get drivers who have their appropriate classification driving title. I know that you were saying we want to wait for reclassification study, but I think in many of these cases, we may not be able to if we want to retain or hire people. So if we approve this budget as is in the future, we're probably going to need to revisit it when we come back quarterly. You usually do rebudgeting quarterly at least.
Yep.
At
And we
the
can do it
very
more
least.
often too.
Right. As a commissioner, I would say that, the directors of the departments, keep your eye on this. And if you have trouble in the future, you should be coming to the board and administration for adjustment of the budget in the future. If this budget is passed as is, I guess is the point I'm making through all this questions and statements.
The only thing I would add is these are the requested ones. There's a lot of dissatisfaction with the current wage structure based on the last wage study. And so I'm sure there's a lot of departments out there that didn't voice a request. And I think we need to do this in an objective manner. I agree with you. We're dealing with a lot of requests, and the background information that comes with it tells me, yeah, we certainly do need to consider this. However, we need to do it in a wide sweeping of all our employees. I don't think we want to pick and choose because we're all under stress. We're all losing employees. We're all having difficulty replacing positions. And I want to commend Administrator Frost for moving ahead and expediting the classification and wage study so we can get this thing taken care of. But we need to do it in an objective and transparent and comprehensive manner, and not pick and choose, because there's going to be people that are going to be unhappy with that process.
Well, if you make a decision, someone's unhappy and someone's happy.
That's
But
always,
if we say we're not going to, look at certain situations, that makes our structure rigid and we're unable to, make adjustments. If I'm throwing Jake under those maybe. If Jake can't get drivers to bring back, the containers to the facility, we have to do something immediately on that, right? We can't wait for reclassification, right? We have to serve our constituents. So there are cases, all I'm saying is we need to be open in this, and we can't use a rubber stamp of, well, we're waiting for reclassification. We have to look at each situation and see if delaying a decision does not serve our constituents.
appreciate your comment. Thank you. Yeah,
Appreciate it.
understood.
I do believe we need a reclassification study. Again, I'm not saying we shouldn't. If that's what anyone got from the questions about money. I was just trying to see what our scales are across the board.
You made good comments.
Yep, thank you.
Good point. Too.
Other questions and comments on the proposals that's before us now? Well, we do have some homework to do before we adopt this budget. I know it says that we're going to end up with, if we adopt this, we're going to end up with still a $16 million fund balance. But when you take a look at it in the picture of the 10-year forecast, there's going to be demands on that 16 million. It's going to be gone real quick. And that's why we need to have additional millage for the county. Because what we're doing right now is not sustainable over time. And so we either need to find some of those additional revenues, and the millage is the one thing that can provide those revenues to us. If we can't pass that, we're going to have some significant painful cuts to make in the very near future. I know a lot of work's gone into this budget, and I'm looking forward to moving on with it, and also looking forward to moving on with the millage issue when it gets put before the voters. We do have a very creative staff, hardworking staff, and we always have a savings at the end of the year. So even though we may have $1.5 million coming a little bit more out of our fund balance to cover this budget, in actuality, we may cut that in half or maybe a little bit more by the end of the year from underperformed expenditures. One thing that is not in the budget this year that we did, I think this is the first year, and that's the revolving tax fund. We didn't put anything in this year. I think we did in the 2023 budget, but never drew upon it. Fortunately, we didn't draw upon it because the treasurer's office did not have sufficient funds to pick up those costs. And so some of the local units of government depend on those tax revenues, had to wait until we had additional revenues come in. So that's a big loss, because I think in the past we've taken 600, 800,000, over $1 million. I think one time 2 million. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's been a hit to the budget. So I guess with that, unless there's further questions, we'll move on our agenda. We have Isabella County Administrator Controller Report.
Thank you, sir. I will try to be brief. I'm sure you guys are long tired of listening to me tonight. I know the last month I was able to announce we had hired an HR specialist and a payroll clerk, and this month I get to announce, you've all met him, it's old news now, but Executive Assistant Brian Chess has joined our team in administration, and hopefully next meeting we'll talk about the AP clerk. I do want to thank the members of the insurance committee for their commitment of time and energy and thoughtfulness to seek solutions that will provide a good or better benefit level for us for less cost. So I can't thank you enough for the work that you continue to do. I did want to talk a little bit about the wage study. I know I mentioned it in the presentation and you commended me for getting it done expeditiously, but it sure doesn't feel like I've been expeditious. I wish I could turn back the clock and have the study in hand. Urgent and important is where I live, and the study has now risen to urgent and important. So I suppose I will address it now, but we are certainly rebuilding a team that can more nimbly attack the issues that come before us. I do want to let you know about a visit I had recently to trial court, the backside of it, not the actual court. Was over to the adult probation area where they've been suffering without air for about 3 months. So I just wanted to let you know they've been enduring. I want you to know your facilities director was on it as soon as the park came in. And even amid all of that, they still find time to organize the county versus court golf outing. And I can't thank them enough. I hope that many of you will join us this Friday in that outing, and Prosecuting Attorney David Barbary is cooking us dinner, I understand. So thank you for that team, Isabella. We need that. It feels good. Jake Borton and I believe Commissioner Engler, maybe some other commissioners recently went with Director Borton to deliver letters to neighboring counties about the materials management plans and the retooling of our MRF that we're hoping that they join us in. That went really well. And on Friday, we had 3 other counties join us at the MRF ad hoc meeting in a show of interest as what we're doing. So that was really, really exciting to see them come to the table. Roscommon County, Ionia County, and Mecosta County. Excellent. I do want to mention, Vice Chairman Jalazinski had asked me about the leadership luncheon. I know you all are holding dates. The city has not settled on a date for leadership luncheon yet, but it is down to September 12th or September 28th. So I hope you'll continue to hold those dates if you're able. That is all I have. Are there any questions for me?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have one question. We have the contractual payroll person. Is that going to continue on, or you think the new person's getting into the swing?
We have, right now, we have a contractual accounts payable person. And the reason that person is still contractual is because we hired that person contractually to do the executive assistant, to cover executive assistant. Robert Half, yes, yep, it's a temporary through Robert Half. And that person is still, when they were in the executive assistant position while we had it posted, they are still covering some of those duties. They're still training Brian Chess in those duties. So right now we are still using them through Robert Half. Probably maybe another week or 2 is all. And then we're hoping to transition to our employee.
Thank you. Any other questions? We'll move on then to committee. We don't have any appointments to boards or commissions, but we do have committee reports. So the first committee is Finance and Administration Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. The first item the Finance and Administration Committee has is to consider ratifying and placing on file the July 28th, 2023 invoice list in the amount of $1,294,938.89. The August 4th, 2023 invoice list in the amount of $1,028,664.66. And the adjustment list dated August 10th, 2023. Beginning with the invoice list of July 28th. Some of the larger dollar items include payment of our June billing for Clark Construction for the new sheriff's office in the amount of $1,117,864.66. We had a payment of $28,166.96 to 44 North for our international pharmacy prescription costs. And I see several entries there too from the treasurer's office for lowering taxable value for 2022 for an amount close to $9,000. I did have a question regarding the cost of, or the Commission on Aging Building Exterior Repair and Maintenance from Bill Hout Painting. I'm curious as to what was done. It was pretty substantial. I must say. Oh, did he really? Okay.
The areas outside the external that have data or were wearing through.
Okay. Restoring the front of the building. Okay. Outside of these items, we have just the usual customary payments associated with county operations. Do you have any other questions? Commissioners? No. All right, seeing no further discussion, we'll move this invoice list to tonight's regular board session for consideration. As for the invoice list of August 4th, it includes a $54,000 appropriation to community mental health. Another payment to Clark Construction for $568,746.46 for the July billing for the new sheriff's office. And I see $141,346.47 payment to Central Concrete for the asphalt paving out at the MRF. Then nearly $60,000 to WellPath for providing medical services to the sheriff's office correctional facility for inmates. As with the July 28th invoice list, most of all the other entries are again normal and customary for the county. Commissioners, any questions? Seeing none, and we'll move this item, this invoice list to this evening's regular board meeting for consideration. As far as the adjustment list goes of August 10th, again, we have our usual payments to avoid late fees or to take advantage of early payment discounts from Gordon Foods, Consumers, JP Morgan, Chase Bank. All the others are normal again and customary. Do we have any questions about the adjustment list? No. Seeing none, again, we'll move this adjustment list to our regular board meeting tonight. Our next item is to consider approving the prime contract change order number 9 with Clark Construction in the net addition amount of $45,463 and authorize the board chair to sign the same. We have with us Heidi, I believe. Heidi, from what I gather here, looking this over, correct me if I'm wrong. This amount of $45,000, $463 will be deducted from our buyout line, which is accumulated from previous reductions and deductions and costs for the project. So it won't be coming out of our contingency line at this point. I see McGurk having a completion date change, which costs $26,989. I see McGurk for $18,003 for relocating a sanitary sewer structure, adding an additional 200 feet of force main, and then $4,091 for stone changes to sanitary sewer trench. Is there anything I missed there?
And then adding on to this waterproofing of the sanitary manholes that was part of the township requirements.
Also, the township asked for those to be better waterproof.
Correct.
Okay. Did you want to add anything to that?
I think you've got it covered. I don't, unless there's a specific question.
Questions for Ms. Heidi? No. Again, I just want to make a comment to Heidi and the rest of the folks out at the site. We were originally, 6 weeks behind in delays. The good folks out there, including Heidi and Clark Construction and all of our subs, have reduced that to 1 week delay.
Wow.
2 weeks.
2 weeks now, 2 weeks.
It was 2 weeks.
Got a little greedy, I'm sorry. So 2 weeks, we cut a month off because these good folks out here are really working hard and helping us minimize our additional expenses based on delays. So again, to you, thank you, Heidi, and to all the subs. Thank you.
I will share that with everybody. Thank you.
Hey, Commissioner Embry and I had a chance to do a walk around the project, and it's a very impressive facility. It's going to be a difference of light and day from our current correctional facility to the new one. And
Impressive.
Clark Construction, the way they orchestrate all the ebb and flow of all these different things that are going on, they're doing a very good job at the management of that project. And thank you, Heidi, for your patience and why we went through the budget and a few other items.
No problem. Thank you, Jerry.
Do you have any other questions for Heidi, commissioners? If not, thank you again, Heidi. We'll
you.
move this to our regular meeting tonight.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. The last item for the Finance and Administration Committee is to consider eliminating the full-time operator position, improving the new full-time curbside roll-off driver / operator position at the material recovery facility. Welcome, Director Borton. Thank you, sir. I'm gonna preface this real quick. I know we had our meeting, and I just want to tell you, I like the creativity of creating better scheduling flexibility for yourself and reducing risk liability by minimizing our financial exposure to the county. I really, from my perspective as former business person, this makes me a little tingly. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But keep that in mind. You may see me again. Basically what we've done is just, we're trying to do a combining of jobs. We had a position vacated. We've just done some adjustments on it to be able to lump in some few more details on everything. So, pretty standard stuff. Doesn't, unfortunately, it doesn't change. Well, I can't say unfortunately or one way or the other. I haven't really sat down to look at whether this does change a classification or not. So I'll leave that caveat there on the table. Because we do understand where we're at on all that, but we also understand where we're at. Yeah, it's like I said, trying to look at everything we possibly can. So pretty standard, straightforward as far as the staff report is concerned.
Commissioners, any questions for Director Borton? Thank you, Director Borton. So hearing none, we'll move this item to this evening's regular board session. Mr. Vice Chairman, this concludes the business of the Finance and Administration Committee.
Thank you. I would say great job, but be kind of self-serving too. We'll move on then to our next committee, which is Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
Yes, Mr. Vice Chair, we have one item. It has to do with the Child Care Fund. Consider approving the budget request for fiscal year 2024 Child Care Fund in the amount of $1,785,877.07 and authorize board chair to sign the same. We have Carrie Curtis here, I believe, online, our court administrator. And as you know, in committee, every time this topic comes up, there's always a lot of questions on there. So there's some minor changes in the agreement this year, and I'll let Administrator Curtis explain them.
Thank you. So the total amount is not much different. It's $40,000 more than last year. And to account for that is possible changes in the day treatment, non-secure contract agreement amounts, and then the cost of living adjustment for those staff that are funded under this program. So the 50% reimbursement covers McBride Quality Care, along with non-secure, which is non-secure and day treatment, our intensive probation officer, and the costs of youth in residential and detention facilities. So exciting news that I'm sure all of you are going to love is that amount is going to 75% for fiscal year 24. The caveat is that does not include the residential and detention fees. But all of our other expenses will be reimbursed at 75% by the state versus 50%. So we are very excited to see that start. The other change is that our basic grant funding in January was increased from $15,000 to $56,520. Don't know why that amount is that specific, as Commissioner Engler asked. I have no idea where they got that from. But that is 100% reimbursable. So that will cover counseling, drug testing, assessments, and some electronic monitoring at 100% reimbursement. As we've had a lot of discussions about, electronic monitoring is the new detention because there just isn't any placements available for kids. So that will really help offset the cost to the county to cover those expenses in that area. Other than that, it's a pretty standard request for us.
Are there any questions for Administrator Curtis? As you know, this is always one of the funds we watch quite well because it's unlimited and our liability is 50%. And Carrie Curtis, the administrator, and the judges have done a real good job in understanding that. I think, what was it, a year or two ago when they raised the juvenile age limit, so it put a little more stress in the juvenile care. Do you remember when that happened?
So this is, I think we're going into maybe the third year of that, I think, where those 17-year-olds that used to be adults are now in the juvenile system. We do get some funds from the state for those under a separate program, but that has really stressed the capacity limits of some of the facilities. The other issue, of course, is staffing, because you can't pay people enough to work in those places, so they don't.
Okay, any more questions? Seeing none, we'll move that forward to tonight's session, and with that, Mr. Vice Chairman, that completes the work of the Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
To the members of that committee, good job. Yep. Moving on now to Human Resources and Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Our first item, consider approving the Mount Pleasant Community Foundation grant application in the amount of $3,000 for the 2024 Art from Our Park event, and authorize the board chair to sign the same. We have Alexis Hanson here from the Parks and Rec Director to give us the background. Hi, Alexis.
Hi, excuse me. So this will be 2024 will be the 17th year for this Art from Our Park event. And it's really turned into more of a partnership with Outreach, where the county parks are hosting and kind of providing financial support, and Outreach does a lot of the heavy lifting on planning. Because of the transition this year, with director and just the department having so many things going on, we're looking to actually apply for funding from the Mount Pleasant Area Community Foundation, as opposed to the Saginaw Arts Council. And so the Community Foundation has an assurance form that needs to be approved by the board before any grant can be submitted. And so we are going to be, upon approval, asking them for $3,000 for next year's event.
Awesome. Any questions or comments for Alexis?
So are you not applying for the council, Art Council grant then? You're just going to the Community Foundation, but not the Michigan Council for the Arts?
Yes, we have the council's funding for 2023's event, which is coming up next month. This would be, because of things happening in the department, we missed the August deadline for 2024. And so in order to still try to secure some funding for next year, the Community Foundation had a fall cycle that we could try to get into. And so this allows us to still have the event and to get some outside funding rather than just paying for it from our Parks Fund.
Thank you for that explanation.
Want to say thank you to the Mount Pleasant Community.
Oh, yeah.
Great part with them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move that forward to tonight's meeting. Second item, consider approving the amendment to the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund agreement for Meridian Park acquisition, resolution number 2023-04, and Michigan Department of Treasury form 3677, and authorized board chair to sign the same.
So the Meridian Park acquisition project has been going on for quite a while now. And the good news is that we're getting very close to the end with this project. So I'm hoping that after tonight's documentation, we'll be coming in front of the board one more time before closing, and then we'll be closing on this project. So the documents that are in your packet and included with the staff report tonight include an updated project agreement with the DNR. So part of the funding is coming from the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund. They require a project agreement between the county and the DNR. When we first submitted for the application and created that agreement, the seller was offering 11 acres to Isabella County for purchase. After the process started, the seller changed their mind, wanting to only sell 4 acres. And so this agreement amendment reflects that change from the 11 acres to the 4 acres. Along with that agreement amendment, the DNR requires a board resolution. And so that's what those first 2 pieces in this staff report are.
Any questions? want to thank you for coming on board. This has been a long process.
Yeah.
It'll be worth it to the
Mhm.
county.
We're jumping in.
Get the 4 acres. and open up that.
Absolutely. And so one more piece with this, I just wanted to make sure there was no questions regarding the DNR agreement. The final piece of this is that there was a agricultural exemption, a PA 260 on the property. So also in the packet is a Michigan Department of Treasury Form 3677. That is simply a notice that Isabella County, as the seller, submits to Union Township, the properties in Union Township. So we submit that to the assessor, notifying them that we're changing the use and rescinding that agricultural tax exemption. And so that form just needs to be signed, and then Union Township is already aware that that's happening, and they're awaiting the form to be submitted, and they're ready to take care of that process. Any questions on the Form 3677?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is consider approving the agreement for services between Amalgam LLC and Isabella County for parcel maintenance, and authorize the board chair to sign the same. Tim Neoport, Community Development Director, is here to give us the background on this item. Hi.
Yeah, good evening. This is a contract with Amalgam LLC. It's a renewal contract. We've had this contract with them for a little more than a decade. They essentially provide services to us by creating our GIS parcel or maintaining our GIS parcel layer. So they do all the edits, the changes, the splits through the townships for the year, and we pay them to do that maintenance. This contract is up, I believe, at the end of September this year. So the renewal contract is from October 1 of 23 for 3 years. The fee charge for that service is $13,500 a year. It has been that way in the contract for at least the last 4 contracts. They have not increased their costs to us. They're a local company. They do a great job. They're right here when I need something. If something's an emergency for us, we can run right over to their office and take care of that. So this has really been a great relationship we've had with these folks.
Any questions on this? Seeing none, this will be on our agenda in a few minutes. Thank you. That concludes the work of the Human Resources and Public Works Committee, Mr. Vice Chair.
For the good work. Moving on to intergovernmental affairs, we do not have any. Administrator controller business, we have none. Unfinished business, we have nothing. Moving on to new business, we have 2 items. The first one is public hearing on fiscal year 2024 proposed budget. Commissioner Engler, would you like to introduce that?
Sure. Considered scheduling the public hearing on the fiscal year 2024 proposed budget beginning at 7 p.m. or soon thereafter, as it may be heard on Tuesday, September 5th, 2023, as a hybrid meeting in person and electronic at the Isabella County Commission on Aging and via Zoom.
Thank you. This is pretty much a procedural matter. As we adopt the budget, we need to have a public hearing so we can gain that input, and everything is pretty much spelled out in legislative action. Is there anything you want to add, Administrator Frost?
No, sir, I just, anyone that wants to speak is welcome to do so.
Any questions or comments?
Seeing none, I guess we'll move this forward to tonight's meeting.
The next item under new business is Isabella County Board of Commissioners special meeting. Commissioner Marino, would you mind introducing that?
Okay. The item is consider scheduling an Isabella County Board of Commissioners special meeting with Johnson Controls for the purpose of discussing the performance contracting project on Wednesday, August 23rd, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. as a hybrid meeting in person and electronic in room 320 of the Isabella Administration Building located at 200 North Main Street in Mount Pleasant, Michigan.
Thank you. And this is in regard to our performance contract consideration with Johnson Control. We've had 2 presentations by Johnson Control as to the scope of the project, the cost of the project. Commissioner Embry brought up some good questions at our last meeting. That we need to still have some fine tuning. We need to know what the cost, even though this is going to be a good project because it's going to come in with some savings and also a savings in energy, also savings and maintenance effort over time. And there'll be some grant dollars that will come in from state feds to help finance this. But we're looking at a couple of options. One option is about a $5.5 million project. And another option's closer to 8.5, 9 million. So this is something, even after we get all these savings and grants in, we're still going to have, I think, some impact on our operational budget, the general fund in the future. So we want to make sure that everybody is well versed in what we're looking at. It's impressive, the type of work that is being proposed. You know, we know we have a 40-year bond to pay off the correctional facility, sheriff's office, which doesn't leave much wiggle room for all the other buildings on our various campuses. And we already know that from that study, some of the boilers are 20, 30 years old. We have one situation where we have 3 boilers and one doesn't even work. It's being cannibalized for parts for the other 2 because you can't get the parts any longer. We know from the notices that air conditioner failings and administration building, the court building, is a lot of challenges. So if we move ahead with this, it should take a lot of this off the plate for a good period of time. But again, there's going to be some costs that even the finance committee doesn't know those factors. So we'll invite Johnson Control to come before us to make that presentation. It's nice that the special committee meeting will be scheduled after our groundbreaking ceremony at the Correctional Facility Sheriff's Office site. With that, Administrator Frost, do you have anything to add?
I do not, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Mr. Vice Chair, I do.
Okay, Commissioner.
I'd like to thank Director Shoemaker. He's been very diligent and very thorough in his review of this whole process with Johnson Controls. He's been very active in trying to keep our expense to a minimum. I've asked on separate occasions for line items cost, and I'm looking forward to that. I want to see item by item exactly what it's going to cost. My prior experience leads me to believe that there's some opportunity there for us to save money, and not just a few $1,000s. I fully expect to see something in the $1 million range to come off the top of this cost. So I appreciate Mr. Schumacher for joining in this process. We will be bringing other people in to review this process and the costs, because I don't think we should have to spend any more money than we should. I think it's a fantastic project. I think it checks all the boxes, but I think it's very important that we drill down to save as much taxpayer money as possible. So thank you, Mr. Schumacher.
When? You want to add anything, Dave? Did you want to add anything? So we should have some type of a document sent to us by Johnson Control that we can look at ahead of time. I know there's a belief that we can cut some of the costs and make it a better project. I don't know that. You know, I don't know where it stands in the marketplace in terms of cost for boilers and solar and all these things, but I think if we put all our heads together and meet and ask the questions, we should end up with a good final product.
Good.
Any other questions or comments? All right, then we'll move on to another opportunity for general public comments. With that, anybody online? Are there any announcements? The only announcement I will make, go ahead, Commissioner Engler.
Yeah, before Commissioner Hutchison takes it, but do not forget that the chicken barbecue at Beale City is happening on Sunday the 3rd. So everybody comes out. We have not reduced the size of our chicken in years, so.
Dine in or out.
Yes.
Sign in or out, yeah.
You need to talk to Commissioner Embry on how to make more money.
Oh, can I make one comment?
Okay,
These folks in my restaurant experience, you have a system that is as good as any I've ever seen for getting people in and out. I gotta tell you, very commendable. I go and sit and just watch. So I think it's wonderful. Thank you.
the only final announcement that I would make, and we need to pass this on to the Chairman Hope, is that this is what, the fifth meeting in a row that we couldn't start our regular meeting on time at 7:00, but I've closed the gap on it, the closest we've been yet. So let's take we're gonna adjourn this. Oh, go ahead. Are you going to defend Chairman Hope?
I mean, Connie, you could have made a,
I'm
you
sorry.
know, comment in 5 minutes
It is on.
at the next.
Connie Leafield, Union Township, and I just wanted to mention that we finished our fitness part, our fitness, court, thank you, in the McDonald Park. We're going to be doing a ribbon cutting on September 7th at 10 a.m. with all the people there.
Cool. Connie, thank you.
Very neat.
Entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Support.
Move to support to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It passes, and we'll reconvene the regular meeting at about 7:20.
7:20. Very good, sir.